The podcast you're about to listen to may contain random lines from musical theater, terrible attempts at regional accents, and a sincere discussion about mental health. You have been warned. Are you ready to start singing with your feet? Formidable! Allez, c'est parti! Non, nous ne sommes pas fous, nous ne sommes pas ivres, nous sommes juste dans la joie. Une joie profonde, nos cœurs elle inonde. Cette joie, elle vient du ciel. Non, nous ne sommes pas fous.
Welcome to Sing With Your Feet, the podcast in which we hop down to the pumpkin patch to rescue a listener from a very, very bad day. The podcast in which we look at what isn't working in our ideal life without blaming ourselves for every tiny thing that's going wrong. The podcast in which we draw a distinction between expectations and expectancy and find that one of them is an incredible vector for fairy dust. My name is Lily Fields, and I'm going to be your fairy godmother for the next half hour or so. We are in week 2 of a 4-week series about the 4 questions we need to ask ourselves every day about just one theme of our ideal life. I sometimes will refer to your ideal life as something of a big, beautiful Venn diagram, and if you need some help understanding that, then you should go back to listen to episode 34 called Navigating Your Ideal Life. We've been trying to distill your life down to its basic components and seeing how those components interact and overlap. So that's why I like to see it as a Venn diagram. We did this by answering the prompt, in my ideal life, I am a person who. Keep in mind, it's not in my ideal life I have, or in my ideal life my husband is a person who. We've spent a lot of time answering that prompt. Then we take the time to see what themes rise to the top. For me, there were 19 of them, which included work, parenting, marriage, health, personal style, a clean house, and way more. Your themes may be different than mine, and that's okay. That's great. That's normal. We're all different, right? Then, each day, we take just one of those themes, and we answer 4 extremely simple questions about that theme. Number 1, what is working? That's what we talked about last week. Number 2, what isn't working? That's what we're talking about this week. Number 3, what do I need to think about? That's next week. And number 4, what do I need to do today? If you feel like I'm getting repetitive about this, then I am 100% doing my job. Repetition is how we get good at anything, and getting good at examining our progress towards our ideal life is no exception. That said, I promise we will be moving on to another topic in just a few short weeks as we head into the holidays. Bear with me, Cinderella. We are on our way somewhere. With no further ado, I am going to share a listener letter with you today, and I want to assure you I wrote back to her right away, and we even had an amazing FaceTime conversation to talk her down from the ledge about what happened. Then I asked her permission to share her story with you. You'll see there probably isn't a better example of no good deed going unpunished than what we're going to talk about today. And I swear if you didn't just hear Alphabet belting out that, a no good deed goes unpunished, then you and I need to reconsider our working fairy godmother and Cinderella relationship, my dear. So, all musical theater diversions aside, here's that letter. Dear Lily, I hate my life. I hate my children. I really hate my husband. I'm sorry to dump all this on you, but I feel like you might be the only person who understands and won't judge me. Parentheses, this is Lily talking. I do understand and I won't judge you. Some idiot in my family, in parentheses, me, got an idea that it would be fun to go to a pumpkin patch with my kids. I got this stupid idea from an article I saw in People magazine about celebrities, and the pictures were so pretty. She got the idea from a People magazine about celebrities, and the pictures were so pretty. I got it into my stupid head that in my ideal life, my family dresses in plaid shirts and cowboy hats and goes to the stupid pumpkin patch. I have 3 kids, boy-girl twins age 4 and 1 toddler boy 18 months. I also have 1 husband age 33. Thank you for the precision. I swear the day started off bad and I should have aborted the mission. My older son accidentally gave my toddler a black eye that morning. My daughter refused to wear a plaid dress I bought her because she said it looked like something a boy would wear. This is Lily again. My sister and I used to have the same conversation about a dress our mother would make us wear that was gray, and I think my sister called it the boy dress. So I'm totally with your daughter on this one. So back to the letter. I finally convinced her by letting her wear a lace t-shirt of mine under the dress. Brilliant move. My husband was clearly not into this, and he kept saying, "Why don't we just get a pumpkin at Publix?" And I kept muttering, "Please just shut up," because obviously my husband not being into this meant that my older son, who already would have preferred to stay home and watch cartoons, kept saying, "This is stupid." We drove by, count them, not 1, not 2, but 3 public supermarkets on our way to the pumpkin patch. By the way, some sort of cosmic torture with my husband saying we could just stop right here at each one. I'm so sorry. I'm not laughing. At the 3rd one, I couldn't hold my tongue and I said, "Can you just pretend for a few minutes that you love your family?" This isn't what I meant to say, but it was enough to get my daughter crying. The pumpkin patch was a fiasco. My older son started sneezing within seconds of getting out of his car seat, and my toddler fell in love with the ugliest pumpkin in the patch. I kept trying to take pictures, trying to get everyone to smile. You can imagine how that went. Or you can see the picture I attached. Hold on. Let me look at the attachment real quick. Yep. Yeah. Okay. It's beautiful. All right. So, Lily, I went into this trying to live my ideal life, and I ended up hating my life. Help. By the way, I'm not always this negative. I love the podcast, thank you. And I like to listen while I'm doing the dishes because the music makes me want to dance. Okay, now help. Love. Pumpkin Patch Party Pooper in Greenville, South Carolina. Oof, girl, I feel this. I feel this in every inch of my body, and not just because I saw the picture. I feel this because I have lived similar crises with my own family and have come away saying, we are never doing anything fun again as long as I live. It's like the higher our expectations for an activity, the more certain we are to fail, right? Well, this is when we need to start singing with our feet. You see, there is a fundamental shift in thinking that you need to do in order to stop hating your family for ruining your Instagram-worthy pumpkin patch photo shoot. And I can highlight it in just 1 sentence, taken from your own letter, in your own words. May I? In my ideal life, my family dresses in plaid shirts and cowboy hats and goes to the pumpkin patch. Let's get back to the basics here for a second. When we answer that prompt, in my ideal life, I am a person who, it is not about our family or how they dress or about where we go, right? It's about who you are, Cinderella, who you are in your ideal life. Maybe in regards to the situation, a more apt phrasing would be, in my ideal life, I am a person who enjoys memorable moments with my family. Or, in my ideal life, I'm a person who has fun holiday traditions. Or, in my ideal life, I'm a person who is sensitive to the wants of my family and knows when to push and when to let go. Now, those would be great in my ideal life statements. Let me assure you, there is nothing wrong with wanting picture-perfect holidays, and we will talk about that in a few weeks. Dreaming about what we want our kids to remember about our holiday celebrations is fun. Pinterest is a great place to get inspired by, but it's a lousy place to set our hopes on. People magazine articles glorifying celebrity holiday traditions is a great place to get an idea from, but it's a lousy place to get parenting advice from. But to be truly authentic about what happened in this situation, you need to ask yourself that ever-important question, why? What was it about that celebrity pumpkin patch article that inspired you? Having talked to you and asked you this question live via FaceTime, I know that your answer surprised you, and I even wrote down your answer in my notes. I loved seeing them outside like that together. you shared with me that your family doesn't get to spend a lot of time outside. Your older son has allergies, your daughter isn't very outdoorsy, your husband would rather build things in the garage than take a bike ride, and the little one, I believe you said that you felt like the toddler leash was created just for him. So what we discovered is that in your ideal life, you are someone who gets outside with her family. If that is what inspired your interest in doing this activity, then maybe there might have been a less high-stakes way to go about doing it, right? The idea was great. And if you hadn't pinned all your hopes for those perfect photos of the experience, maybe it might have been great. Your expectations got in the way of your expectancy, and there is an important difference in the two, which I am going to stifle my urge to explain in the voice of the philosopher princess. I am going to try to summarize it in a completely normal voice, so hold on. Here we go. Expectations are like a checklist that will lead to an anticipated outcome. Expectancy is saying, I wonder what will happen if I bring these different elements together, and then hoping for the best, but not hanging your 10-gallon hat on any one of them. Expectations, while a perfectly valid way to get things done, things that depend entirely on ourselves, or when we have communicated doable steps with the people that we need to have on board to get it done, expectations will inevitably lead to disappointment when they need to get checked by other people who don't know that they are supposed to be checking off boxes. Did that make sense? The outcome that you hope for cannot be met when other people don't know that you're depending on them, which is, we agree, what happened in your situation. Expectancy might say, I'd love for my family to go outside together this fall, so I'm going to suggest a few outdoorsy things and see what makes my family sparkle. I wonder what would have happened if, maybe, in an effort to add some levity, you would have been willing to say, let's look for the ugliest pumpkin we can find. At the very least, this unexpected twist might have made it possible to not have to try and convince everyone to have smiles for pictures. Just like when we talked about creativity being the act of saying, what would happen if? Here, you'd be creating a situation that's harder to fail. Ugly pumpkins are still pumpkins, and they are more fun to look for. More natural smiles, and oh, what if they actually end up with a good-looking pumpkin? Heavens no. In this situation, there is no ideal outcome, but there is potential for less stress, less conflict, and more joy. And lest I repeat myself endlessly, joy is the fairy dust that makes our lives worth living. You and I talked about this, but I want to reiterate it for our listeners. Your ideal life is about who you are. It's about how you react, about how you think, and it's not about anyone else. You can only control what happens between your ears. Let me say that again. You can only control what happens between your ears. And my dear, how that impacts what you do with your mouth and your hands. When you love yourself, when you consent to your life, and when you stop comparing yourself and your life to others, and especially comparing it to celebrities on Instagram with their nannies and their cowboy hats and their endless resources for cute outfits, you are, by the nature of things, going to create more memorable and more joyful moments. It will happen, but you must let go of your unrealistic expectations. And actually, I want to insert a personal story here because I did something recently that could very, very easily cause me to fall into the expectations conundrum. But by some miracle, and after years of practice in the seeking of fairy dust business, I managed to let expectancy take the wheel, rather than my checklist of expectations for everyone in my life. Many years ago, a very dear friend received as an inheritance an amazing grand piano from her great-uncle. Her house only being large enough for one piano, she asked if I would piano sit her old piano, only until her son was old enough to be out on his own with his own apartment, at which time he would take it back. It was like a long-term loan, but I like to call it piano sitting. To celebrate the arrival of her grand piano at her house, she had a party, at which we made some music. There was her family, who were all musicians, plus some musician friends of ours. It was so much fun. This is also the same friend who organized a living room concert to celebrate her 40th birthday. Well, years passed, and finally her son was out on his own and he picked up the piano back in January. I was very sad to see it go because that piano had become part of my family. Fast forward to the start of this summer when a dear old lady from my church was moving out of her home and into a residence for seniors. She couldn't take her piano with her, so she was looking to rehome it, and she offered it to me and my family. She even mobilized some people to help us move it, and one of those people had a little truck. A friend watched my boys while we went and helped pick up the piano, and suddenly, I had a piano again. I knew that I wanted to celebrate my new piano, just like my friend had all those years ago. Obviously, my new piano was not a grand piano, and my apartment is not an exquisite showpiece on the hill. But nonetheless, I organized a little party, inviting the people who helped me move it, the lady who gave us the piano and her adult son, and a few people had to cancel at the last minute, so I scrambled, inviting everyone I ran into to my piano inauguration party. Now remember, I celebrated a birthday recently. It wasn't an accident that this party was around my birthday. I wasn't going to tell anyone in advance, but this was, for me, a way to celebrate my 45 years in a special way, with special people. Plus, I convinced my friend Myrtille, who you've heard from before, who loves to sing, to perform a song for our guests. My friend Aline even got out my son's double bass and played along. It was, in a word, magical. Listen, my apartment is tiny. Everything in it is falling apart. I usually don't like to invite people over because of the shame I sometimes feel at the state of affairs. I mean, we literally do not have cupboard doors under our sink in the kitchen, so that the fact that we store a dozen Playmobil toy bins under there cannot be hidden. But I decided to set all that aside and do my best to create a pleasant atmosphere with pretty food, good people, and nice music. And you know what? It was amazing. You know what else? I didn't take a single photo. It never even crossed my mind. I was so enjoying being with my guests and singing songs and eating cookies and drinking bubbly. It's not because we didn't take any pictures that the event never happened. I really believe that each of my guests will remember our afternoon as something very special, even though we don't have any photographic evidence of it. When you do something, when you do anything, no matter what it is, please don't do it for the gram. Don't do something just to have a photograph. Do it because it fills you with joy to do it. I promise you, this will make a difference in how you experience your life. I love to hear from my listeners. If you are having an ideal life conundrum and would like some help working it out with a little fairy dust from your fairy godmother, drop me a line. That's lily@lilyfieldschallenge.com. You can also direct message me on Instagram, that's lilyfieldschallenge, or on Facebook, that's lilyfields. It would be my honor and my pleasure to help you get through your conundrum.
Elle me fait bondir et vibrer, crier. Elle me donne envie de chanter, danser. Elle pousse à agir, donner, partager. Et tout simplement de sourire, aimer.
Part 2. The second question. If I included this particular listener question in today's episode, it's because it goes so well with the topic we're tackling this week. Today, we're looking at the question, what isn't working? Now, let's remember, the context of asking ourselves these questions is not between you and your spouse. It's not between you and your mother. It is just you. There is no one who is going to judge you for what isn't working because no one else has to know. I think there is power in putting things into words. Remember a few weeks ago, I said that words are surgery for the soul, and I believe that with all my heart. Not necessarily conversations, although having a good heartfelt conversation can bring healing. I really believe that the articulation of what isn't working, even things that seem relatively small, is a powerful vector for finding a solution. You know how Okay, maybe this is just me, but sometimes I will complain about something to my indulgent husband, and then he will swoop in and say, well, if you don't like doing this activity, maybe you should just quit. Or, have you tried doing X, Y, or Z? Usually, when that happens, I just end up more frustrated because I wasn't looking for a solution. I just wanted to put my frustrations into words. The act of saying the words was sufficient sometimes to have performed the surgery and gotten my soul into the recovery room without anyone else's intervention. But because my indulgent husband loves me, he wanted to help me solve my problem. So, in the end, in the words of the immortal Mike Birbiglia, what I should have said was nothing. When you answer the question, what isn't working, in the context of your ideal life exercise, you are not going to get any reaction to your answer from someone who, however helpfully, wants to solve your problem for you. You are simply going to have put your concerns, your anger, your frustration, your boredom, whatever it is, into words. And then you can study it, solve it, or dismiss it. Part 3. Beware self-criticism. For many of us, we have a little microscope for things that aren't going well. Like the Princess and the Pea, the tiniest inconvenience knocks us off our trajectory, and we end up with outsized reactions to things that might really not be that big of a deal. But to us, they feel like a big deal. Listen, Cinderella, I live in France. I live in the country where complaining is the national pastime. I believe that French people are genetically different from the rest of the world in that regard. They have a vocabulary for complaining and a capacity to find things to complain about that astonishes me. But I think that for you and me, we are capable of being lucid about what isn't working. It isn't like an additional level on Maslow's hierarchy of needs for us to find things to complain about. What I get concerned about is when what isn't working turns into a self-critique. Remember, as we answer these questions, we are not judging ourselves for the things that aren't working. We're being curious. We are showing genuine interest in ourselves and compassionately digging deep. I think, for example, about Party Pooper in the Pumpkin Patch, who sent me the letter. Her words were pretty harsh about herself and her situation. Don't get me wrong, I enjoy a nice little expletive-laden outburst now and again. Like your every other fairy godmother. I mean, a good harsh word can really capture a mood, am I right? But we can't just stay there. We can't just say, what isn't working? And the answer be, I'm an idiot. We need to go deeper, no matter how unpleasant it is. Side note, I told you that I want you to do this exercise when you are completely alone, and that having a Kleenex box nearby can be a really helpful thing. Something magical happens when we clearly state what isn't working. We can release a lot of the stress that we've been holding in. And yes, sometimes a really good cry can be what will help us make a breakthrough. Bonus points if it's a really good cry followed by a really long nap. End of side note. It is possible to look back on a week when, for example, my pants aren't fitting anymore and I know full well that I ate my way through a bag of chips for breakfast and an entire plate of brownies for lunch to answer the question, what isn't working, by I'm fat and I eat like a pig. Now, my pants not fitting anymore is the symptom of something. That something happens to be that I wasn't taking good care of myself, and I knew it full well. Binge eating was the end result. But how did I get there? I got there by being tired. I got there by being stressed out, by having no self-control and having no outlet for my stress. I got there because I had no other food in the house to eat. Those are the things that weren't working. What isn't working will inevitably lead to more questions. And those questions will help us as we head into the third question, which is, what do I need to consider? The theme of next week's episode. When a lot of things aren't working, the most important thing to do is simply write it down. No judgment, no editorializing, being honest with yourself, addressing the elephant in the room. Trust yourself enough to recognize what isn't working. I want to say that again. Trust yourself enough to recognize what isn't working. Being compassionate with ourselves, being patient with ourselves, treating ourselves like a good friend who needs a kind ear These will help us stay out of the self-criticism trap. Part 4, when everything isn't working. Just like we said last week, that we can sometimes end up answering the question, what is working, with nothing is working, we can also end up answering the question, what isn't working, with everything isn't working. First, there's this. The feeling that nothing is working is not the same thing as itemizing everything that isn't working. We can feel like nothing is working, but also have a hard time coming up with anything specific that isn't working. This is a kind of neutrality which is extremely important to understand and to recognize. You see, when you find yourself in a place where both nothing is working, but nothing isn't working either, then you absolutely must ask yourself that critical question, why? Fatigue, overwhelm, boredom, creative low tides. These are very real manifestations that can lead to stagnation. Sometimes we can't even put them into words or put our finger on exactly why we're not making any progress. It's very important then to catch these things when they start to appear. This is another brilliant reason to develop the discipline of doing this exercise every single day. This neutrality can sneak into one area without touching the others and remain self-contained, meaning that it's really just a sticking point in one circle of your Venn diagram, just one theme of your ideal life where you're stagnating a little bit. This happens. Next week, when we talk about the third question, what do I need to consider? We will ask, for example, am I taking care of my basic needs? And very often, our honest answers can reveal that we are stagnating because we aren't taking care of ourselves well enough. But that's for next week. Where I would start to be concerned is if this neutrality becomes generalized across all the circles on your Venn diagram, at which point you really need to start getting professional mental health support. This feeling of being stuck and not being able to suss out anything at all that is working, but not having any reason either that nothing's not working, that's something you need a professional to help you with. So first, I want us to imagine a little plotted graph with a y-axis that says what is working and an x-axis that says what isn't working. Were you to place points in that graph, what we just talked about would be the 0 point on our graph. Nothing's working, nothing's not working. Theoretically, we would end up creating a downward slope from upper left to lower right. Why? Because in theory, at least, and you know how much I love theories, if everything were working, then nothing wouldn't be working, right? So if you were having a theoretical infinite point on the line what is working, on the y-axis, since everything is working, then nothing isn't working, right? Right? I think that's right. Likewise, if everything isn't working, or said another way, nothing is working, then logically you are at an infinite point on the x-axis. These extremes, either the everything or nothing, are something to keep our eye on. Nothing is infinitely perfect yet, and nothing is infinitely horrible either. Taking this time early in the morning when you are completely alone and you don't have to be anyone for anyone else means that you can perform a little verbal self-surgery simply by putting into words factually what isn't working right now. Measuring out how much is working, how much isn't working. Are those things related? Next week, we're going to take a look at how what isn't working can be a springboard to solutions and progress, one little mote of fairy dust at a time. If you feel like you're drowning, like you're having a really bad day, or a bad week, or a bad month, or a year, or a really bad life, that really, really stinks. And it can get better. There are an infinite number of tiny steps of progress that you can make, millimeter by millimeter, improving your trajectory through your ideal life. And not all of them mean you have to learn how to swim or else you'll sink. Simply factually articulating what isn't working is the act of putting your head above the water when you're drowning. Being lucid and stating what isn't working will help you define the real forces at work so that you can counter them. I want to encourage you. If you feel like absolutely nothing is working right now, find someone to talk to, whether it's a friend, or a therapist. Put your concerns into words. Remember, words are surgery for the soul. Thank you so much for listening to the podcast. Don't forget to subscribe on your podcatcher, and please, if you enjoy something you've heard here, share it with somebody you think could use a fairy godmother too. A great big thank you to Seven Productions here in Mulhouse, France for the use of the song La Joie as the intro and the outro to the show. Also, a great big thank you to Matt Kugler who sang it and Claude Egway who wrote it. Also, on a side note, Matt Kugler just released his first studio album called Aventura. It is absolutely amazing and beautifully produced and inspiring. It is available wherever you can download music. You're going to want to look for Matt K, and the album title is Aventura. This is your fairy godmother signing off. Just remember, it is never too late to start singing with your feet.